Thank you for joining us, Tom. So I'm Demetri, and this is Tom from Urfuture. Can you just start by telling us a little bit about your background, Tom?
Yeah, so I'm obviously founder of Urfuture. I wouldn't call myself a CEO because probably not big enough yet. But yeah, I started the job app for young people. But before that, I've worked across like sales, recruitment, apprenticeships for probably like a good part of 10 years. So yeah, been around quite a bit and seen a lot.
So what kind of gave you the idea of starting Urfuture?
There's probably two routes, like a personal story, which I can go into, and also I guess working in the sector and in the industry, that's sometimes when you notice that there's problems and challenges, and I think probably my own experience, like from being in an apprenticeship provider to actually being an employer, that kind of helped me kind of understand what Urfuture needs to be. But from a personal side, I guess going back like quite a few years now to when I was 18, I kind of did the traditional stuff, GCSEs, A-levels, did okay. I think I got 2 Bs and a C in my A-levels, so like decent grades, and and I kind of went down the university route because the school I was at, it was kind of deemed a success to go to university and stuff and do all that. So I just followed what everyone else did. Quite quickly realised after 3 months, probably spending all my student loan on going out and stuff and never going to any lectures at uni wasn't for me. And then kind of got left in a situation where I didn't know what to do, didn't know where to turn, didn't really have that resource as an 18, 19-year-old to go and look. And I actually did like 4 or 5 different jobs. I got sacked from them all, like I don't mind saying, like I got sacked from them all because they weren't right for me and they weren't a good fit for me as a person. Fell into sales, literally fell into it. And then within kind of like 3, 4 years, I'd grown my career to being a manager and things like that. And I think if I'd have known all that stuff about myself at 18, instead of going to university and probably having like 3 or 4 years, which was quite a difficult period for me as a young person, I could have just gone straight into sales, started my career and probably gone even faster. So I think like for me, it came from a place of, if I could create a tool where as a young person, you didn't know what you want to do, which so many young people do, you could give direction and help guide people. If we could deliver that and then put jobs and opportunities on the other end of it, then it would be a tool that would be useful, because from my own personal experience, but from also working within the sector.
Yeah, I think I can kind of back that what you were saying a little bit. I was very much, I just wanted to do something cool and fun, and that's where I remember actually someone came to the careers fair at our school in the sports hall, and they were from the college. And they said, do you fancy doing film? And I thought, well, actually, that might be quite a cool thing, and fell into it. But then that was good for me because I naturally found something I enjoyed and made a career out of it. So I didn't have that kind of where you went and kind of did 4 or 5 things and then fell into sales. So I guess you're right in saying that young people sometimes don't have the opportunity to figure out what they like straight away. So having an app there that can then tell them, actually, you might be a really good fit as an engineer and a mechanic. That's kind of a great thing that's not really out there at the moment.
No.
So I can completely understand why you wanted to create that.
Yeah, and I think the school system, like, don't get me wrong, schools do an amazing job and stuff, but it's so difficult to give personalised career advice to every student at scale. Like, it's actually probably an impossible task. So it's so hard for young people because they probably don't get that. So I think like we are trying to do something with Urfuture which gives career advice at scale and gives direction, which then people can maybe go to a career advisor or learn off other people off. But it gives that kind of initial part of advice at scale.
So you've tailored it to apprenticeships. As you said, obviously the university experience might not have been the best fit for you. And I agree, I was forced down the university route by my school, by my college. They wanted naturally that progression. And I think, again, if I was open to the idea of apprenticeships as a young person, I probably would have pursued that, because I know the likes of BBC do now media courses, and that would have been a good kind of stepping stone into me, because I feel that the university system was probably wasted on myself as a filmmaker, videographer, because it's not the piece of paper at the end of the day. It's about the quality of your work and that experience behind your work. So is there kind of a plan for you maybe going forward to open this up past apprenticeships, or strictly keeping it with apprenticeships?
No, 100%. I think like for us, with the idea behind Urfuture is to be the job app for young people. Yeah, and obviously a great place for us to start and working with is within apprenticeships, because firsthand from being a sales director and stuff within the apprenticeship sector, like I know how much value there are in apprenticeships, how many opportunities there are from doing a level 2 all the way to doing like a degree apprenticeship. Like there's something for everyone now. And I think like it has come a long way in the past 5 years, awareness, but there's still massive awareness to do in schools and stuff. You know, when we go out in the streets and speak to people, they still don't know of the opportunities of apprenticeships and things. So I think like there's still a long way to go. It is getting better. But for us, like long term, we just want to be, you know, we can go into it today. Like, you know, there isn't actually, and you know, when people say like, oh, there's some business ideas and you're like, why didn't I think of that? Like, there isn't actually a job app or job board which is just for young people, which has all entry-level jobs on, and it's just one place for them all to go to. And it's mental because there is for everything else. If you want a tech job, an engineering job, there's all like niche job boards, but there isn't one just for young people. And I think like the difference between an 18-year-old getting a job and a 40-year-old getting a job is massive in terms of the experience, the way that you're attracted to it, the way that you engage with it, how the users flow should work and stuff. They're totally like worlds apart, yeah. And so we thought that if we could create that place and be the job app for young people, we would definitely have a place in the market. And so apprenticeships is a great place for us to start, but you know, we want to have entry-level jobs on there, and that might be within, you know, sectors like retail, hospitality, those sorts of areas where, you know, you just need to kickstart your career. It might be things like skills boot camps and free job courses, you know, where like if you went into a classroom and asked kids what free job courses, what skills boot camp is, they wouldn't have a clue. But it's a great way to get into apprenticeships if you don't have the GCSEs and things like that. So like, you know, we want to be that one app where you go to as a young person and we can support you in all the different paths that you want to take.
So what was like the light bulb moment? Was it that? Can you recall the very moment you thought there should be an app for this?
I think it's been working like a work in progress over years and years and years. So like for me, going back to when I was at QA, you know, and I was working there, and I felt that the way that you attracted and engaged young people wasn't right. And it wasn't just QA, it was the whole sector. You know, the rise in social media and seeing the rise in social media and how much of an influence it is on young people's lives, how it influences the decision making and things like that, and how people were starting to use it. But even today, you know, if you do follow me on LinkedIn, like I do make a few jokes at kind of some of the employers or companies that try social media on Facebook and stuff and things like, they don't get it for some reason. They don't seem to get it. So I think like the whole rise of social media, and then this whole piece around, I've always believed that for somebody to be good at a job, there's certain things about you which make you good at a job. And whether it is, you know, your personality, what you need and want out of a job, you know, what motivates you in a job and what you get for job satisfaction. I always think they're the most determining parts. Forget about your CV, forget about education. Like they are the most things that are going to define whether you enjoy your career and you actually want to stay in it and retain. And nobody was assessing that way. So we felt, you know, I've always felt if we could build something that assessed that way. So I think like all the different parts of my career have come into kind of this one thing.
So let's talk about someone that's interested in tech, because you're very much in a role in tech now.
Yeah.
I know I'm going off script slightly, but what would you say to someone that's looking to get into the industry like this, app development, kind of this digital space that we're in now? We're talking to content creators, you know, people that like data. What kind of advice have you got for them?
I guess for me, to get into that world, one thing you need to be is it's so fast paced and moving so quickly. And I've learned over the past year, like more about tech. You know, I was a sales director in an MSP, like a managed service provider. Like I'd got tech background, but it evolves in 12 months so fast. And like, so I think for any young person, it's all about being able to keep up to date. You don't need really good qualifications to get into tech. You don't need, and sometimes the way that the school system is, like sometimes you might not actually be good at school, but you might have really, really good abilities which make you good at tech or content creator, things like that. So I think it's about keeping up, being fast paced, keeping up with what's going on in the environment and continuously learning. Like one thing I have found is that if you want to work in any creative or digital role, you have to have the ability to keep learning and keep growing and keep basically learning all the time, because everything changes. So therefore, if you don't, you stay static, you don't have a career. So I think like people who are interested in continuous learning, like it's a great career.
Yeah, I can completely understand that as someone who works with cameras all the time. And from when I started, I remember starting with DV tapes, filming on a Canon XL1, to what we've got now, mirrorless cameras. And then I think someone walked into a meeting the other day and said, are you going to shoot on camera or phone?
Yeah.
And before, you know, we kind of have now stepped in a kind of a weird sidestep where the phone camera has become acceptable just because the amount of kind of power it has in terms of social content. And we'll go into that a little bit because I think you've done absolute phenomenal on the likes of TikTok. But it's a nice segue into how do you kind of simplify the process for a candidate through the app? What is kind of the step for them?
Yeah, so I think, as I said, one big thing that I guess for me personally, and something I've never liked CVs, right? And I think that what is on a CV, and when you break it down, what's on the CV, and it is steeped with bias. It blocks social mobility because all that is on a CV is the school you went to, which is dictated to by usually how wealthy your parents are and where you live. Yeah, it's then obviously the opportunities you get at school, which is dictated to by the wealth of your parents and the opportunities that you get. And when you break down the CV, all the stuff that's on an entry level thing, when you've no jobs, you've no experience, even if you've got a bit of work experience, people who have work experience sometimes get the opportunities, comes because of who your parents are, or what upbringing you've had. So I always had a massive issue with CVs in entry level. Okay, for later down the line, but entry level, you can't judge people off CVs because it just drives the top 5% to get the opportunities. I think I use an example that if a single parent mother, who works 24/7, right, and the child wants to get into an accountancy, and then another candidate whose parents are both accountants and have loads of time to spend with that candidate, if they both go for a job, the one who obviously maybe from a single parent home might be miles better, but the one will get it whose parents are both accountants because they can write a really good CV and they'll get them through the door. So we had to kind of totally try and remove CVs out of the process. And I genuinely believe that the future of recruitment for entry-level people is to have no CV. So we wanted to replace a CV, and that was the whole point of Urfuture. So for a candidate, basically what you do is you create a profile, right? And it's built the same way that you would do on Instagram or TikTok or something like that, because that the whole thing that we'll talk about is that Urfuture is all about modernizing and making the process for young people authentic to everything that they do day to day. And so everyone creates profiles all the time, so they know how to do it. So we create a profile, takes 2-3 minutes, but what we're doing on that is it's bringing in all the key information that you would need that maybe would be on the CV, like the name, date of birth, things like that. But off the back of that, obviously, once you've created that profile, every candidate does a career match. And that's where kind of the difference between Urfuture to anything else that exists is that the career match then drives everything that happens in Urfuture. And then it gives a personalized experience for every young person. So we take CVs out, replace it with a profile so you still get the key information, but the career match is what drives everything through Urfuture for the candidate and the employer or apprenticeship provider.
So in terms of an employer's perspective, what does that mean for them in terms of getting the right candidates and the calibre of candidates that they'll be able to attract?
So from an employer's perspective, obviously for a start, one thing which is probably not Urfuture, but it's if you use a CV, right, none of it is actual information that is filterable. So when you actually use CVs and everyone pinging in these CVs, because it's all Word documents and PDFs, a lot of the time the ATSs or the tools that you use, you can't even get to the key information anyway. So it's all a bit pointless them sending it in because you can't filter on it for that. So just from a non-basic perspective, when you use Urfuture as an employer or a provider uses it, basically they can filter on every aspect of the profile, which means that your search is miles faster because you can actually get to the candidates you want easy because everything is filterable. But obviously the wider part of it is from a matching perspective. Obviously what we did is I took 9 months out before I set up Urfuture, and I knew kind of what I wanted to do, but I'm not a behavioural scientist, right? I try and be everything, but I'm not a behavioural scientist. And so we went away, we hired a behavioural scientist from the University of Oxford. They kind of sat down with me and talked about what we wanted to do, what we wanted to achieve. They told me, right, you need to go and get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of employers to buy into this, to basically give us time to interview staff, to then be able to understand all the different things about all the different jobs in the UK. So what we did was we mapped out 18 career categories. These are the 18 potential chances that you could go into a job. So it might be accountancy and finance, digital, engineering, all the different paths. And then what we had to do was basically interview people who worked in those jobs. And so we went and literally did for 9 months. Yeah, it took a long time. Did 30 minutes to an hour interviews with all these people, a minimum of 10 people in each of the 18 different career categories. And that ranged from people who worked at major corporate organizations all the way down to SMEs to get different aspects. And we asked them, what personality traits make you good at your job? What are the basic needs that are required in that job? So is it outdoor, indoor, in the office, not in the office? Do you get to travel a lot? Do you not? We understood from them what motivates you. So what are the key motivators that make you go to work every day? So how much money you earn, how much progression you get, the speed of progression, all that sort of stuff. And then what gives you job satisfaction? Do you get to work in the environment? Do you get to be creative? Do you get to have great attention to detail? And so we literally went and interviewed all these people. And from that, we were able to create a framework of basically, if you want to work in engineering, based on 15 people and all their responses, we looked at all the common themes that happened across them all. And then from that, we were able to say, okay, great. Like that's what a candidate should look like in engineering from a profile perspective. That then means that then young people can go and match against that, which obviously then creates your career match. So it's based on data science and all behavioral science. And then what we've then done is we've added in machine learning and AI to it, so that basically every time a candidate gets through the process and places in the platform, we learn from it that that was a good match because it plays and it updates the match. So the matching all becomes a live predictive environment where basically it's not then based on the original behavioral science, it's based on that, but it's also based on candidates getting jobs and feeding it back into the system. So it totally revolutionizes the way that young people match and employers match. But from an employer, what you can then see is every candidate, you can see out of 10 how much of a fit they are to that career category that you're hiring for. And then also you can build job matching. So you can choose individual traits that you want out of an individual to build your own personalized job match score. Right. And then for every candidate, you can see from 1 to 10, this candidate's a 10 out of 10, 9 out of 10, 8 out of 10, 8.2, whatever it might be. And you can start to rank and understand people, but in a totally non-biased way, because it's all based on a totally fair hiring system.
So from a non-biased perspective, let's look at the automotive sector. So Remit Training operate quite heavily. It's a large proportion of candidates. How do you stop it from leaning onto a male bias? Because obviously we want to promote more positive imagery within the automotive industry. So what's kind of the factors that it goes through to avoid that?
Well, I think obviously you've got to think about where that bias comes from. So the bias comes from that historically, potentially like men may have done them jobs more. And therefore then when a candidate might be at school or might ask the parents like, I want to work in automotive and I work in engineering, and turn them out, no, that's a man's job. Like that's where your bias comes from. Okay, so like through Urfuture, we totally remove that because it's agnostic. So a young female could go on to Urfuture, and if they have the right personality or they want the certain basic needs at their job, or that's what's going to motivate them and that's what's going to satisfy them, they will get a high match to engineering. So that's the point of it, is that like it takes away traditional bias, because that is the problem in society, is that as well, like if you are a young person, you go and speak to your parents are both accountants, you ask them about engineering, how do they advise you about a career in engineering? They can't. So like what Urfuture can do is that a young person can join, do the career match, and then they might match engineering and then go and look into it and research it, and that's what the job they want to do. That's the point of it, is that it removes bias because it's totally agnostic. So therefore young people can just find out, do they match it? And if they do, great. And then that's going to then in turn, obviously, more people are going to apply for jobs that they traditionally maybe wouldn't have done because of bias.
So from an employer's perspective, how do they see the candidates? Like you said, there's a filter system. Are they rated by scores? How is it kind of, let's say I'm hiring 10 vacancies for a light vehicle technician. What does that look like for me? What am I going to see as an employer?
Now, obviously, what we're trying to do is flip, the switch on to kind of what you see, because like you say, today, if you used Indeed or something like that, what would you get? You'd get kind of like this base level CV with maybe like a few words on it and stuff and nothing on it. So how do you judge that person? You can't. So what we've done is we've basically created like a shortlisting system. So if you were working with an apprenticeship provider like Remit, for example, what you would get is a short list of candidates. It's a live working document. So what the employers can do is they can basically click on the candidate. They see the profile live, so like they see the profile, so they see kind of like the information about the candidate, a bio, all the information. Candidates can create videos about themselves which are built and filmed in apps, so things like telling them about yourself, the journey, so you can watch videos on each candidate and get a feel for the personality. But off the back of that, you can also see the career match and a full in-depth information about the career match, and you can also see the job match score. You can also in Urfuture build stuff like custom tests, so if you set a custom test maybe later on at the stage, you can see that. So basically it's like a live profile that you see about each candidate. Right. So it's very tech-led, removing that paper element of CVs, but then also you can share that with people internally and stuff, and then you can all review it in one place, write comments on it back and forth and things like that. So it's, moving away from that paper-based, no information, to giving probably actually like loads of information, and then being selective with the information that you want to value in the process. But also, there's loads of stuff that we can do in terms of like how you interview someone, because I find myself personally that, like, from an employee perspective, we've got three apprentices. Like, I remember interviewing them and not really knowing what to say. So like through Urfuture, because we do all the personality and the basic needs, motivator, satisfaction, all that sort of stuff, and we get that information on them, we can provide like interview reports for you, so you know sort of what questions to ask them and things like that. So it totally transforms the hiring process to being data led, and then you're using data to basically, be able to start conversations, which makes it easier to find out more about the candidate and open up conversations that potentially you wouldn't be able to in an interview.
Yeah, I think that's a really valid point. From when I've hired previously in a different job role, I've had to sift through 120 CVs of young people between 18 and 23. And it was like you explained, it's just, how do you sift through that quickly, and how do I know who the right candidate for that role is? It becomes very difficult to judge someone. So then you kind of lean on your own bias, not intentionally, but I think that's probably an issue with the job market, and people leaning on the hiring managers, specifically leaning on the bias or the recruiter.
Yeah.
So in terms of how the job market's changed, probably since you were a salesperson at QA, how has it changed? How have you seen that landscape shift to make you get to the app to where it is today?
I think that's a problem probably, is that like we have a slogan, it's like taking jobs out of the 1990s. And that's kind of like our slogan, one of our slogans. If I said to you, like, when do you think the first job board was made? When do you think it is?
I'd probably say early 90s, surely.
Do you know who it was?
Indeed, maybe?
No, it was Monster.
Right.
In 1994. And basically the first ever job board that you could use. You could post a job on it, and then candidates could update and send CVs on it. Well, that was in 1994.
Right.
And I don't think much changed. And we've just come out of 2024.
The
so
year
like,
I was born.
it's a long time ago, right? And I genuinely think, from an innovation perspective in the job market, we're not much further on from 1994. Yeah. And I think that was what drove Urfuture, is that everything we do today has changed. Like, if I want to order a pizza, I used to have to go in the phone book and find people who actually are, maybe not the young people who understand, like, you had to go and ring up and order. If you wanted to book a taxi, you had to use the local taxi company. If you wanted to go on holiday, you'd use teletext. I remember my parents booking holidays on teletext. Everything now is done through an app. Touch your button, you can do it in a couple of minutes and stuff. Careers is still the same. Like, we're still in this like 1990s loop of like CVs and archaic process. And that's one of the reasons why like Urfuture came to be, in terms of job, because it hasn't changed. And so that is the point, is that the market hasn't changed at all, and we are trying to change it. And I think, so like, it's not evolved. Like, that is my answer to that. It is the same.
Part of me wanted you to say, when you took 9 months off, you spent 9 months applying for jobs just to see how horrific the market was. But I agree. I think when I was applying for my first jobs, I printed off my CV at the local library. I mean, this is probably early 2000s. Printed off my CV and went round the local shops and handed my CV. I probably got one call back.
Yeah.
Ultimately, because I wasn't the right fit for them jobs, or they just didn't like the look of a young lad going in and handing his CV, I suppose.
I think that is the problem is that the job market hasn't changed. Like, the premise of job boards and things hasn't evolved. So if I like go into more on it in terms of, if you think about a young person, as I said, in the apps that they use, it's also the way that they consume information. Yeah, so like, TikTok, Instagram Reels, Snapchat, all video led, or photo led and imagery led, high image, and you look at a job board, what is it? It's a white screen. They all look, if you can tell me the difference between Indeed, Total Jobs, CV Library, Monster, if you can actually show me the difference in terms of their framework of what their website looks like, I'd be amazed. Because literally it's exactly the same.
One's orange, one's green.
Yeah, it's just a different logo and different colour scheme.
Yeah, absolutely.
So like they're all white, they're all high text, like loads and loads of words. And for a young person who spends all their time on Instagram or on TikTok using those sorts of platforms, and then goes to find a job and it's that way inclined, it feels alien to them. So like, that is the problem. Like, we are trying to evolve jobs to make them app based, but also make them video first, to have video content in there, to have imagery on there, to make them look nice, to have the way that you interact with a job common to the way that you do things in your life. So whether it's swiping on jobs and swiping to apply or reject, little things like that make the way that young people consume the information relevant to them. And I think that's the problem, which I said before, is that people who run careers and run jobs and are in charge of all this are usually 40, 50, 60. And you want in young people to apply for jobs and consume information the same way that you do. But the world has changed so much for Gen Z in terms of how they've grown up using iPads at school for everything that they did. You know, technology has changed so much that there comes a point where it doesn't work, it doesn't meet, and we want to be the bridge between the employers who maybe are over here, you know, older in their careers and want information a certain way, and young people who want information that way. We want to be the bridge that bridges that for young people and employers.
So how do you avoid gamifying the whole process? Because as you explained, the swiping is obviously we know certain apps that do that.
Yeah.
How do we avoid kind of gamifying the job market in that perspective then?
I think it has to be gamified to a certain extent to engage people. I think, you know, if we look at kind of the stats around kind of youth unemployment and stuff at the moment, there's obviously an issue. You know, like I think it was the highest level since COVID recently, you know, and it's on an upward trend. You know, I think we're roughly like 30% I think of people, you know, unemployed or not in education. There's a problem there. So like we need to do something has to change. So I think like there is an element of gamification. The career match for us is an element of gamification because you can kind of go from not knowing what you want to do or have no idea about yourself, and you do a nice gamified match, and off the back of that it actually gives you real information. So I think as long as you gamify stuff but the outcomes are there and it's not just one big game, then it's relevant, you know. So like what our idea behind the app and the platform is that that's what it does. It does gamify stuff to a certain extent, but there's also real outcomes for it by getting a job at the end in a career that you like, in one that you're going to stay in.
So in terms of the collaboration between Remit and Urfuture, what is the end goal of that? Kind of what are not only Remit getting out of it, but in terms of the learners as well, ultimately, what's that journey?
I think obviously for me, Remit have been an amazing kind of partner. You know, one thing you've got to do when you're building something like I'm building is you've got to go to companies like yourselves and get you involved, because there's no point building loads of tech and then it not being relevant. You know, so what we wanted to do in why, you know, I reached out to Sue and stuff, and I've worked with Sue and the team and stuff at Remit, is that, you know, I wanted to understand kind of what you guys wanted out of it, what challenges you had, and one of the challenges was how do we penetrate social media and how do we attract through social media? So we went, you know, and created a tool for that. You know, how do we go, you know, if we get lots of applications, how do we kind of, you know, fairly judge all the people and make sure that we're driving no bias and things like that for our clients and employers? So we looked at doing that. And so that, you know, the point for us has always been to get people like Remit involved and be able to build a platform so it works for them and then works for their employers. And then from a young person's perspective, you know, apprenticeship retention is, you know, mid 50%, you know. Once again, there's an issue there. Like, people don't retain in apprenticeships enough, you know, and I know that you guys have a better retention than that, but the national average is that. And so, like, for a young person, what are we offering for them? As I said, we're offering a modern approach to careers, a way where if you speak to young people, their biggest challenge is confusion. They don't know what they want to do. So many people just don't have a clue. So like, we're solving that key issue, which is confusion. We give you guidance. We personalize everything through the app, you know, so every job for a young person has a personalized score to them. There isn't a job app in the world that does that. There is no personalization, you know, so we personalize everything for them. So we make the whole journey so much easier for them. And then at the end from it, what do they get? They get a job that they actually know they're going to enjoy, they're going to fit, and therefore they're going to be more likely to retain in it. You know, we can't guarantee that every person does retain, but we can do things from a data perspective that ensure that it's more likely to happen and they're more likely to retain. So like from an employer's perspective and a young person's perspective, the key things are job satisfaction, retention, you know, that are going to happen for employers, but also for employers finding people who potentially would have never ever looked at them as an option, you know. And I think that's a big thing. You know, we did some work with the Met Police, you know, and the Met kind of were really happy with the fact of that we opened up the eyes of people who maybe would have never looked at a career from the Met through TikTok, you know, and our TikTok channels had 80 million views last year, you know, we're the biggest careers page in the UK on TikTok and stuff. And all that is just making people aware of the opportunities that are out there. So like for some of the automotive customers, like we talked about before with like females, some females sadly just wouldn't ever think about it as a career. So if we can change that and we can open people's eyes to like, you are a fit for it, regardless of sex or whatever it might be, you know, then we can open doors for people to start those careers, but also for employers to diversify their workforce, get diversity of thought, and be able to drive those things that they want to drive.
So I think that's a really interesting point about the Met Police and kind of open their eyes up to people that might not be into that job role. So in terms of what is your grander ambition of kind of growing the platform, are you wanting to work in every sector, cover kind of every job out there? What's kind of the grander ambition?
Yeah, I think obviously for us, the target is for us to be the job app for young people, in the UK first. We want to kind of be the one place that every young person goes to find their first career, find their first job. So if you want to start your career, you want to find that first job, Urfuture is the place to go to. And as I said at the start, whether that's apprenticeships, entry-level jobs, whatever it might be, if we can create that platform where everything's on there, it's built through matching, it's personalised, what we're going to be able to do is create an ecosystem where we have all the employers, apprenticeship providers looking for talent, all the young people looking for talent, all in one place. And it makes it miles easier. It's not so fragmented like it is today, where you've got people coming from all different sources, having to manage all the different people. It removes the fragmentation. It just creates one place where everyone can kind of, employers and candidates can meet, and therefore then have a good fit, and therefore then have a good career. And yeah. It's
kind of their first step into, especially now with the apprenticeship aspect of the platform, it's kind of their first step into making like a LinkedIn platform for themselves.
Yeah.
Kind of that career growth, and then I suppose you can track that, like you said, through their whole journey. So if it does grow beyond apprenticeships, which I know you've talked about briefly, then you can see that full life cycle, that person's journey, which I think is quite empowering for themselves as well.
Yeah, I think we'll always stay in that entry level space. Like, for us, we want to be the job app for young people. And I think as you get into a career and you get into a job, you start to build a CV, yeah, and that's fine. Like, because CVs are important. I think probably later down the line, when you've actually got some work experience, you've got 2 or 3 years, and you can put it on your CV. It's easier then for people to understand you and understand, okay, they worked at this company, they did this job, they stayed there for this long. That place for us at the moment is that entry level space, whatever entry level job is, and that will always be kind of our niche. We don't want to go and do like any further on down the line than that, because I think that we can lose sight of. One of the problems that job boards have, if you are having 18-year-olds apply on there, 40-year-olds, 50-year-olds, 70-year-olds, whatever age it is that you can't niche a platform experience, because Indeed will never be able to do what we're doing, because they've got all different types of ages, so they need to kind of fit everyone. For us, we're saying we can build something for kind of 18 to 30-year-olds that really, really suits them. It's an experience for them. They're going to love being on the app. They're going to enjoy it. They're going to get real value from it. We're going to add features in, like removing confusion, giving a different experience in the way that they consume the job through video, things like that. So it's more easy for them to understand what they're applying for. We can be really niche on that, and the bigger companies can't do that because they're trying to service everyone. So it's really important that we always stay in that like entry level space, because that's where our niche is.
So similar to Remit, you put in the learner or the young person at the heart of kind of the whole process, and making sure it is about them, they're getting the best experience. But ultimately, if they get the best experience, as you mentioned, they'll retain on the job. So the knock-on effects for the employer is ultimately they'll get a happy candidate, they'll stay on program, and from a training provider perspective, it keeps you with a good QAR ultimately.
Yeah, and I think like from an employer's perspective, like the employers, where do you start when you're trying to find, like some companies have major brands, big names, and everyone knows them, and they will get applications. But a lot of companies out there that are major kind of 5,000, 10,000 person businesses, nobody has a clue who they are. So I think one of the challenges that employers have is attracting through social media is like really difficult, because your social channels, what we found is that you kind of have to have one message on your socials. So like if you're a company and you're trying to promote like what you do as a business, all those different things, it's really difficult to then actually penetrate followers who are just wanting to talk about careers. So it's better to use a channel or a service that literally only ever talks about that, because our audience are all 16 to 30 looking for jobs. So if we post, it goes to those people. While if you're a big company, you might have 50,000 followers, but a lot of them maybe are totally irrelevant to the career. So it's really important to use a channel like us to engage people. And when you do engage people through social media, you find people that potentially would have never looked at your brand and things like that. So as I said, some big businesses maybe have 5,000 to 10,000 staff, and nobody who's 16 knows who they are. So like using somebody like Urfuture for attraction through socials is we can actually get eyes on your jobs and get eyes on the opportunities that you have. And that's like really, really unique in terms of that it's so difficult to do that. So we've managed to penetrate social media. You know, we've managed to penetrate TikTok, which is the biggest channel, you know, and so we give a real advantage by using Your Future for Remit, you know, to be able to actually get loads of eyes, millions of eyes. You know, we did that campaign with the Met, 3.7 million views in 3 weeks. Like, you know, unbelievable numbers that you could never reach, you know, through careers fairs and stuff like that, that gets eyes on your jobs and gets a message across that you want to get to young people in a way that they want to watch and want to learn.
So I think, again, like you mentioned, a lot of big businesses are so product focused on socials. So when a candidate is looking for a job and they want to do the research on kind of the job satisfaction, the benefits of that job, it's not really out there. They can't really do the proper research on a business. So it makes it super difficult.
And a lot of them have like these all singing, all dancing career sites, yeah? And it's important to have them, right? But to get people to them is really difficult, you know, and a lot of the time you have these career sites which have all the information on, but will the young person who attention spans 10 to 12 seconds, right? Will they really go sit on your career site and read all that stuff? Probably not. Like if they can watch a 1 minute video or a 40-second video which highlights it all at a high level, engages them and makes them interested, then they'll probably go and read it. So I think like as well that, you know, like we're kind of that middle ground between getting people to be engaged with your jobs, getting people to listen, because you have that such, you know, in the world that we live now, there's 10, 12 seconds that you've got to engage someone. If you don't, then they're gone. And so like we help you engage those people.
Yeah, we know that all too well in marketing, where if you haven't got someone in the first 5 seconds, then it's game over. You've lost them and potentially a sale or that right candidate. So yeah, I completely agree with all that. And I guess going on to what you mentioned about TikTok, what is the power of TikTok? How is that helping you redefine how you attract candidates to your platform?
I think just total awareness. I think like for me, we were, you know, a year ago, we started a year ago, yeah, and there was 3 of us in an office, right? So how do you compete with the likes of Indeed, Total Jobs, CV Library, who are global businesses, probably have like 5,000 to 10,000 staff, like millions and millions of pounds in marketing budget? Like, how do you compete with them? How do you get out there and make people aware of you? And that is the power of TikTok. You know, we this year outperformed CV Library on TikTok, Indeed on TikTok, and Total Jobs. We were the highest performing job platform as a business on TikTok in the UK. Like, you know, for views. So we have been able to get reach that we would have never dreamed of through TikTok, you know, and as I said, that it's like 80 million people watched our videos this year. Like, that's way more than the majority of like big influencers get, you know. So like for us, you know, we've got to a stage now where I'm going to tell a little weird story, but I was at a spa and I got a massage at the spa, and the woman who was massaging me asked me what I do for a job, and I said, I've got my own business called Your Future. She went, what? What do you do for a job and how much do you earn? And this woman in the middle of nowhere knew who we were, and like that for a business our size, and obviously we've grown a bit now and we're continuing to grow, but you know, that's unbelievable. You know, so like we've been able to do that for ourselves, and now we're doing it for other businesses, and maybe they have big brands, but are they a brand with the audience that you want to engage with careers? Probably not. So like we help engage people because we've got the audience of people who are looking for jobs and get your brand in front of them.
So how are you planning to, obviously you just want business at the minute, you said you're quite small, how are you planning to grow the volume in terms of getting a spotlight on every kind of different career that people want to know about? Because that's quite a lot. That's quite a big feat. And especially looking at Remit, I mean, we could be working with 50 businesses recruiting for them at any given time.
Yeah.
How do you put a spotlight on all them evenly?
Yeah, I think that's the point, is that Your Future is agnostic. So like our vision is that we've grown Your Future as a brand. You know, we are the job app for young people, taking jobs out of the 90s, like that whole stigma of engaging young people to come on the journey with Your Future and be a part of it. When they then join and come on the app, that's when we're shining the spotlight on the employers, because it's agnostic. We're using technology to match people, yeah. So therefore, it's not heavily kind of driven by humans. It's all done by technology. We match people, and then off the back of that, that's where it's totally agnostic. You could be a business with 2 people, but if you are the best match for that candidate, you will come up first in their job matches. You know, so it's like totally agnostic, and that's how we drive it for employers. So, you know, if we're getting this traction of 80 million people, you know, 10 million people roughly a month now watch our videos, they then convert and sign up to the app. Off the back of that, if your job is a match for them, you're going to be right in front of their eyes straight away. And that's how we do it. Don't get me wrong, we like to do social campaigns as well with businesses, and stuff like that, which we do and things. But the idea behind it is that your future is the brand in terms of that engages the young person, because a bit like whether it's Rightmove for properties, where you go to Rightmove, you don't go to the estate agent, or whether it's Deliveroo and you don't go to Takeaway, you go to Deliveroo. Yeah, we want to be that brand for young people, but off the back of that, employers and providers, training providers, can go and then utilize our brand and basically engage people.
Great.
It's so difficult, I think, because social's like we couldn't. It's all about scalability. Like we couldn't scale as like this. We're going to do a video for every company that's hiring someone. But what we can do is build the brand that young people go to, and then if you're on that brand, you engage them in turn.
So, as an employer, how do I get involved?
Yeah, so obviously go for a training provider like Remit if you're hiring for an apprenticeship. But I think for us, obviously, we are launching this year with kind of some training providers, some apprenticeship providers. As I said, we want to start off in the apprenticeship market. We're going to kind of slowly scale from there. We'll be letting employers join the platform. Really simple, just create a profile, post jobs, manage your jobs and things like that. So that'll be coming later in the year, where employers can also utilize it as well, firsthand for entry-level jobs and things as well. But apprenticeships, majority of apprenticeship recruitment is done usually by providers. So, we'll be working with providers. So they'll be able to, certain providers will be on there and you'll be able to use your future through certain providers, one of them being Remit.
So I think another thing for me is talking to the young people now out there. Why should they consider an apprenticeship? What is the big sell for an apprenticeship?
Yeah, I think obviously, I told the story obviously at the start. I quit uni, fell into like different jobs, didn't enjoy them. I actually ended up doing an apprenticeship. So I did an apprenticeship at BMW, like a sales apprenticeship, and it's got me to where I am today. So I think that from my personal experience, like university isn't for everyone, and I think what an apprenticeship offers is, one, you earn money straight away, which instead of going into debt for learning, you're actually earning money. So by the time you finish an apprenticeship, you could have probably about, if you worked out you're on 20 grand a year and you did an apprenticeship for 3 years, you could have 60 grand in the bank, say, rather than being 100 grand in debt or whatever it might be.
Yeah, I feel that.
Yeah, so so from a financial perspective, it stacks up. You're probably 160 grand up in terms of like from a financial perspective. But then I think there's way deeper than that. I hire apprentices into our business because what do they get from day one? They get real world experience. They get to learn off people who do the job. They get to sit every day and be managed by people who can actually coach them and develop them. And real world experience, I've learned in my career, is way more important than anything you can get in a book. So I think for me personally, like apprenticeships give that. They give you real world experience where you can just go and do the thing, fail, learn from it, make mistakes and progress, but you get to do all that. And the people who go to university and come into the job after 3 years, the candidates who've done an apprenticeship have got 3 years experience on the job, which I think is way more important than anything else. When I look to hire people, that's what I'm looking at is work experience. So from my own personal experience, like I went and worked in sales rather than maybe doing my degree and things like that. And by the time my friends and stuff had finished, like I was a bit late because I didn't start my apprenticeship until I was a bit older. But, I'd worked in the job, I'd become a sales manager, I'd done a job and basically gone through that whole journey. And then I was hiring graduates to work for me who'd done an apprenticeship. So I think, university, I'm not slaying it because it's, it's for some people, but it's not for everyone. And I think that apprenticeships are a viable, if not better route for young people, especially if you want hands-on working experience and you want to learn and just get stuck in.
So in terms of, I guess time to fill is a massive issue within the recruitment sector, more so in high level, but in terms of apprentices as well. I know current vacancies that we've got at the time, we're trying to fill 100 for a specific light vehicle manufacturer. Kind of how is Urfuture helping reduce that time to fill?
Obviously, it's all about efficiency. And so one of the things that we wanted to do for Urfuture, like take away all the modernisation, the fun stuff for candidates and stuff like that. Behind it is an applicant tracking system, which basically helps you be more efficient as a business. So because of the way we've set up with matching, because of the way that it's a profile, because of all those features that are on the candidate side, when you actually flip them into the employer or provider side, what you're able to do is be able to react miles faster. You know, you can, if you get loads of candidates, you can filter them really quickly. You can get down to the best candidates quickly. You can video call through Urfuture to someone's app, which basically means that they can answer on their app rather than setting up Teams calls, which saves a couple of days. You can get push notifications on Urfuture. So as a candidate, you know, how do you engage and how do you, in this modern world, get all your information? Well, usually if you're on your phone, even me at 34 now I am, I'm nearly 35, it pops up on my phone, I see it, push notification. Well, if you're relying on emails and the young person's got 10,000 unread emails from all these different e-commerce platforms that they signed up to, they never see it and they miss stuff. So it's the speed of being able to send a push notification, candidate gets it straight away, increases the speed. And then obviously finally, when you're going through in terms of as a provider or an employer, if you actually don't have a candidate, what we've built in Urfuture is a proactive search database. So basically every candidate who signs up for Urfuture, you can go and search all them and find people.
Right.
So you're not just waiting, you can actually react and go and actually find people. So time to hire totally changes because you're not reacting and waiting anymore. You can be proactive and go and actually find people as well. So I think it's a mix of efficiency, but also being proactive. And there's some of the tools we've built in there to just take away a day here, a day there, which totally then revolutionises and speeds up the process.
So what does it mean from the recruiter's perspective that's trying to look for these vacancies in terms of kind of their process? How is that now changing? Because
obviously they can just be miles more efficient. So they can take away a lot of the human-led stuff. Like how long does it take to review a CV? Like ages. You know, how long does it take to sometimes help a candidate with a CV? It takes ages. So it's taking away those tasks from recruiters so they can actually spend time with the candidate, preparing them, helping them, guiding them, giving advice, which is what really resources and apprenticeships or recruiters and apprentices should do. They should advise people. They shouldn't be spending time with the human-led stuff. They should be spending time coaching that 18-year-old or that 16-year-old who's never been for a job interview before. They should be spending time with them. So what it does is it flips it away from having to do human-led tasks by driving automation so that they can spend more time with the candidate and advising them, supporting them and helping them and coaching them.
Brilliant. No, it sounds way more efficient, to be honest. I know some, like I mentioned, some vacancies can take weeks to fill.
Yeah.
And the idea of sifting through CVs sounds quite daunting to myself. And that's why I'd leave that to the professionals.
Yeah.
But it absolutely makes sense in terms of efficiency-wise to cut that time. And then you can actually spend more time, like you said, caring about the learner, coaching them through getting the actual job.
And making sure it's the right thing for them. You know, like, you know, and that's really important is, you know, it's that we want to give the recruiters the ability to be able to, you know, actually do the stuff that matters in recruitment, not the stuff that could be done by AI or could be done by, you know, automation. So
looking now, 16-year-old Demetri, I'm looking for a job. What does the process look like for me in terms of downloading Urfuture? Where do I go from there? Yeah, so obviously you'll be able to download it from the App Store or Android, Google Play. Once you get on that, as I said, create a profile, you do your career match, you get matched to careers. Off the back of that, you can then go on your job matches. They are recommended high to low on the best match to you. You can then swipe, apply or reject or favourite. And from there, then once you've got into that process, all your chat and communication with the employer or the provider is within the app. So you don't need to email or anything like that. You just manage all your chats in there, a bit like WhatsApp. From the back of that, you can video call in there and engage with companies all in the app. And then off the back of that, you can actually manage all the jobs that you've got going on in Urfuture, see when your interviews are, do all that sort of stuff, all the way through to an offer being placed all in one app. And that is the future for young people, is you know, having that ability to be able to do that. All their fingers. Yeah, exactly. Swipe, all of the swipe. And the idea of super like in a job feels really odd. Could be that. Could be a future feature. Yeah. Any kind of final thoughts? Any final messaging from yourself? What? Again, I know you've mentioned kind of your idea for the app, but where would you like to be in a year's time? A year's time for us is obviously to have, you know, we have a waiting list for the app, so we've obviously been running, you know, and we've been signing up thousands of people each month, you know, which is amazing. We've got, you know, over sort of like 30,000 people waiting for Urfuture to join, to sign up, which is amazing. So for us, it's about keeping that steady flow, becoming the job app for young people, where young people trust us. They know that we're putting them first and we care about them. And then for us to get loads of employers who want to innovate,
who want to change, who want to give a better experience to young people on the platform and linking those people together, and obviously getting people into jobs that they stay in and enjoy. Like, that is the vision for us and where we want to be. And, we think, by the end of this year, hopefully, we'll have made some ground to becoming the job app for young people. But I think, for an employer, if your recruitment process or your attraction feels like a Nokia 3210, then, you'll be able to use your future and feel like an iPhone. So, I think that's kind of...
Is it still going to be indestructible, though? Because the Nokias are pretty bulletproof.
They were good, but I think that would be kind of... I look at a lot of recruitment and the archaic process in careers, and it feels like a Nokia 3210. So, we want to be the iPhone for careers. So, yeah.
But how do you kind of stop that drop off? I suppose young people become very dependent sometimes on apps. How do you stop that drop off? What measures are you planning to put in place for when that person turns to 21? Can they stop using the app? What is the kind of journey after that?
I think for us, obviously, it's all about entry-level jobs. So, everything on the app will be entry-level, no experience required. I think that's a big thing, is that, there's no place, as I said earlier, if you just want to get a job and you don't need experience. So we'll always be that place. I think, obviously, after that, people... the habits change and things like that. But we just want to be that place that if you have no experience and you want a job that requires no experience, you come to your future. The future for us is always going to be that, and young people will probably then move to the more traditional job boards because they are built for people who have experience and have the CV and have all that information. So great, they can use them in the future. But for entry level, as I said, you shouldn't be trying to attract and hire people who are 16 to kind of 21, 22 up to 30, the same way that you hire your mid-tier people. And companies who have that same process are going to come unstuck because they're totally different people. They need information in different ways. They want engagement in different ways, and they're attracted in different ways. Mm-hmm. So it's all about moving how you manage young people and having a separate process to how you manage more senior people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think for me, it's because I've interviewed a lot of people around apprenticeships, and you do find more and more, especially with the levy changes, older people take into apprenticeships. So is there a plan of kind of integrating that part of the process and then them older people at some point into the app to say, actually, well, we'll make it inclusively a space for apprenticeships, and that then people, the older people, will have a space to go to as well?
I think that's the thing, is that as a young person, you don't know. You might be a really good fit for an entry-level job. You might be a really good fit for an apprenticeship. I think obviously that comes down to the providers and stuff in terms of, because some young people will want to get into retail, for example, and some might want to go the apprenticeship route, some might not. And that's about the provider understanding if that person is right for an apprenticeship or if they're not. And so that's probably where that route will come down more, in terms of when we want to provide a facility for young people to have the opportunities. Apprenticeships, really, really big part of it, one of the main areas, but also entry-level jobs and different options. And off the back of that, then because we have all the candidates on there, the employers who are looking for an entry-level job or looking for an apprenticeship can then go and find the right people.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Tom. I appreciate the conversation today. Any kind of final thoughts that you want to add, or no? No,
yeah, thanks for having me. It's been an enjoyable conversation. I think, as I said, it's going to be a really exciting year for us. We've got a lot of work to do behind the scenes, but yeah, we're hoping to, really change jobs forever, and really, I guess, help young people and employers to really modernise the process.
I'm looking forward to a conversation in a year's time to see how the app's developed.